He threw a check for $10,000 at her across the mahogany table and laughed. "Buy yourself some new luggage, Elmira. You'll need it when you move back to your parents' trailer." Daria Miller thought he was the shark. He thought his quiet, stay-at-home wife was nothing more than a lucky passenger in his life of luxury. He was wrong. 3 years later, standing in the VIP lounge of Titerboro Airport, Daria was about to learn the most expensive lesson of his life. He assumed she was there to clean the floors. But when the attendant picked up the microphone, the name she called didn't belong to a maid. It belonged to the woman who owned the plane he was trying to rent. This is the story of the ultimate regret. The air in the conference room on the 42nd floor of the Sterling Hargrave building was so cold it could have preserved a corpse. In a way, that's exactly what was happening. A marriage was dying on the table. Daria Miller sat with his legs sprawled wide, the picture of arrogant relaxation. He checked his Rolex Daytona, the platinum one with the ice-blue dial, and sighed loudly, making sure everyone in the room knew his time was more valuable than the heartbreak occurring in front of him. "Let's wrap this up," Daria said, his voice smooth, practiced, and utterly devoid of warmth. "I have a board meeting for Ether Deep in an hour. Elmira, just sign the papers. You're getting the condo in Jersey City and the Honda. It's more than you had when I found you waiting tables." Elmira sat opposite him. She wore a simple grey cardigan that had seen better days, and no jewellery. Her hands were folded in her lap. She looked small against the backdrop of the Manhattan skyline, looming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. "I don't want the condo, Daria," Elmira said softly. Daria scoffed, turning to his shark of a lawyer, a man named distinctive only by his predatory grin. "She doesn't want the condo. She wants more cash. Classic." Daria leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Listen to me, Elmira. The prenup is ironclad. My company, my assets, the house in the Hamptons, they are premarital or protected intellectual property. You get what I decide to give you. Don't play the victim. You lived like a queen for 5 years on my dime." "I just want out," Elmira said, her voice steady, though her eyes were wet. "I want my maiden name back, and I want you to sign the waiver stating you make no claim on any future assets or inheritance I might acquire, just as I am signing away my claim to yours." Daria laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "Your future assets? What are you going to do, Elmira? Win the lottery? Inherit a used car lot from that uncle in Ohio you never talk about?" He grabbed the pen, scribbling his signature with a violent flourish. "Done! I waive all rights to your invisible fortune. Now get out of my sight. My assistant will send over a check for 10 grand for moving expenses. Consider it severance pay." Elmira took the paper. She didn't look at the check. She didn't look at the view. She looked Daria dead in the eye for the first time that morning. "Goodbye, Daria. I hope the money keeps you warm." She stood up and walked out of the heavy glass doors. Daria watched her go, shaking his head. "Pathetic," he muttered to his lawyer. "She didn't even fight. I told you she had no backbone. She's probably going to move back in with her parents in... where was it? Nebraska. I believe she said her family was in land management," the lawyer replied, stacking the files. "Farmers," Daria sneered. "Well, I'm a free man. Jessica is waiting for me at Nobu." Daria Miller, the CEO of the rising tech giant Ether Deep, walked out of that office believing he had just shed dead weight. He had no idea that he had just signed away his safety net. 3 years passed. In the world of high-stakes tech and venture capital, 3 years is a lifetime. For Daria Miller, it had been a roller coaster. Ether Deep, his artificial intelligence logistics firm, had ballooned in valuation. He was on the cover of Forbes, the logistic king. He was a regular on CNBC, and he was dating Jessica Vane. Jessica was everything Elmira wasn't. She was loud, she was famous on Instagram, and she demanded to be draped in labels. If it didn't have a logo, Jessica wouldn't wear it. But the facade was cracking. Daria sat in his office, staring at a red line on a digital spreadsheet. The burn rate of his company was too high. He had leveraged his personal assets, the Hamptons house, his portfolio, even the penthouse, to secure a massive loan from a shadow banking consortium in Zurich. He needed to close the Project Omega deal. It was a merger with a European logistics conglomerate that would net him a payout of $200 million and save his company from bankruptcy. The meeting for the merger was set to take place in Davos, Switzerland, during the World Economic Forum. It was the playground of the elite, the billionaires, the people who moved the world with a whisper. "Daria, baby!" Jessica burst into his office, holding up a shimmering silver dress. "For the gala in Davos, it cost $12,000, but I put it on your black card. We have to look the part, right?" Daria rubbed his temples. The black card was near its limit. "It's perfect, Jess. Look, I need to focus. We fly out tomorrow morning." "Are we taking the Gulf Stream?" she asked, her eyes lighting up. Daria flinched. He didn't own a Gulf Stream. He owned a share in a mid-sized Citation X, a fast jet, but cramped compared to the flying palaces of the ultra-rich. And right now, with cash flow tight, even the fuel bill for the Citation was a headache. "We're taking the Citation, Jess. It's faster," he lied. "We'll beat the traffic." Fine, but don't expect me to post the interior on my story. It's too small." As she left, Daria's phone buzzed. It was his CFO. "Daria, we have a problem. The European conglomerate, the one we're meeting. They've changed the negotiator. The CEO isn't coming. They're sending the representative of the majority shareholder family." "Who cares?" Daria snapped. "As long as they have the checkbook. Who is the family?" "That's the thing. It's a holding company called Aurora Borealis Trust. Old money. Very private. They demand we meet them not in Davos, but at a private chalet in Gstaad beforehand. And Daria, they are ruthless. If this deal fails, the bank calls the loan. We lose everything." "It won't fail," Daria said, adjusting his tie, though his hands were shaking slightly. "I can charm anyone. I charmed the venture capitalists, didn't I? I'll charm this trust." He walked to the window, looking out over the city. Somewhere out there, he wondered briefly where Elmira was. Probably working as a cashier or a secretary, wearing polyester and driving a used sedan. The thought made him smile. He had won. He was going to Gstaad to close a 9-figure deal. She was probably clipping coupons. Teterboro Airport, New Jersey, the gateway to the sky for New York's 1%. It was a grey, slushy Tuesday morning, but inside the private terminal, it was eternal spring. The air smelled of espresso and expensive leather. Daria and Jessica arrived in a hired black Escalade. Daria was stressed. His credit card had been declined for the car service initially, and he'd had to use a backup debit card. It was a glitch, he told himself. Just a glitch. They swept into the terminal. Jessica was wearing a white faux fur coat and sunglasses, despite being indoors. She looked like a movie star, or at least someone trying very hard to look like one. Daria wore a bespoke Italian suit, but he was sweating. "Why is it so crowded?" Jessica complained, looking around the lounge. "It's Davos week, Jess. Everyone is flying out," Daria muttered, scanning the room. He saw hedge fund managers he recognized, a famous rapper in the corner, and the CEO of a rival bank. This was his tribe. He puffed out his chest. They approached the desk of the charter company. "Daria Miller, Citation X to Zurich," he announced loudly, wanting the people nearby to hear. The young woman at the desk typed for a moment, then frowned. "Mr. Miller, I see your reservation. However, there is a delay. Your aircraft has a mechanical issue with the landing gear hydraulic. We are trying to source a replacement part, but it won't be ready for at least 4 hours." 4 hours? Daria exploded. "I have a meeting in Gstad tonight. I cannot be 4 hours late. Do you know who I am?" "I'm very sorry, sir. We are fully booked. I can't bump you to another jet." "This is unacceptable," Jessica whined. "Daria, do something. I can't sit here for 4 hours. The lighting is terrible." Daria ran a hand through his hair, frantic. He turned away from the desk, pacing the lounge. He needed a solution. He needed a drink. He walked toward the complimentary bar area, his eyes scanning the room for anyone he might know who could offer a lift. That's when he saw her. She was sitting in a secluded corner of the lounge, away from the noise. She was wearing a simple, cream-colored cashmere turtleneck and dark trousers. Her hair was pulled back in a loose, elegant bun. She was reading a hardcover book, sipping tea. It was Almira. Daria froze. He blinked, sure he was hallucinating from the stress. But no. It was his ex-wife. She looked different, not older but sharper. The slump in her shoulders that he remembered from their marriage was gone. She sat with a poise that made the surrounding billionaires look like fidgety children. But Daria didn't see poise. He saw an opportunity to vent his frustration. He saw his failed ex-wife sitting in a place she didn't belong. He marched over, Jessica clicking along behind him on her heels. "Almira?" Daria said, his voice dripping with mock surprise. Almira looked up from her book. Her eyes were calm, clear, and utterly unbothered. "Hello, Daria. Jessica, what on earth are you doing here?" Daria laughed, gesturing around the VIP lounge. "Did you get a job as a server? Or maybe you're the nanny for one of the families flying out?" Jessica giggled, clinging to Daria's arm. "Oh, is this her? The one you told me about? She looks so plain." Almira closed her book gently. She placed it on the side table next to her Hermes teacup. "I'm traveling, Daria, just like you." "Traveling?" Daria scoffed. "Flying commercial is out of JFK, Almira. This is Teterboro. Private aviation only. Unless you're sneaking onto an empty leg flight or... Wait, are you dating someone? Some old guy who needs a nurse?" He leaned in, lowering his voice to a cruel whisper. "I told you, Almira. You don't fit in this world. You never did. You look ridiculous sitting here pretending. Why don't you leave before security asks to see your ticket?" Almira didn't flinch. She took a sip of her tea. "My ticket is confirmed, Daria. You look stressed. Is the business not going well?" "My business is booming," Daria shouted, drawing the attention of several people nearby. "I'm closing a $200 million deal tomorrow. I am flying to the Alps to meet the heads of the European economy. And you? You're probably flying to... where? Buffalo? Coach?" "Actually," Almira said, a small, enigmatic smile playing on her lips, "I'm headed to the Alps as well." "As if," Jessica snorted. "Daria, let's go. She's obviously delusional. It's sad, really." Daria straightened his jacket. "Yeah, you're right. Good luck, Almira. Try not to steal any of the complimentary snacks on your way out." He turned his back on her, feeling a rush of superiority that briefly masked his panic about his delayed flight. He walked back toward the main desk, intending to scream at the manager until they found him a plane. Suddenly, the public address system chimed. It wasn't the usual robotic automated voice. It was the distinct, respectful voice of the terminal manager himself. The room went quiet. "Attention, please. We have a priority boarding announcement for a Global Express 7500, tail number November 1, Kilo Sierra." Daria paused. a Global Express 7500. That was a $70 million jet, one of the largest, longest-range business jets in the world. It was the kind of plane heads of state used. "We are ready for immediate departure for Gstaad, Switzerland," the voice continued. "Ms. Almira Kensington, your aircraft is ready. The captain is awaiting your arrival on the tarmac." Daria stopped dead. "Almira Kensington." He turned around slowly. Almira stood up. She picked up her bag, a rare vintage Hermes Birkin that cost more than Daria's car. She smoothed her cashmere sweater. She walked past Daria and Jessica. She didn't look at them. She simply walked toward the glass doors that led to the tarmac, where a massive, sleek, dark blue jet with silver accents was waiting, its engines humming with power. 2 pilots were standing at the bottom of the stairs, saluting her. Daria's mouth fell open. He grabbed the arm of a passing concierge. "Wait," Daria stammered. Who is Almira Kensington?" The concierge looked at Daria with a mix of pity and confusion. "You don't know? That is Ms. Almira Kensington. She is the sole heiress to the Kensington Land Trust. They own half of the Midwest and significant real estate in London and Geneva. She is one of the wealthiest women in America. She rarely travels publicly." Daria felt the blood drain from his face. The name echoed in his mind. Kensington. The name of the family his CFO had mentioned. The family behind the Aurora Borealis Trust. The family he was flying to beg for money. Almira wasn't just his ex-wife. She was the buyer. The silence in the Teterboro terminal following Almira's departure was deafening, at least to Daria. To everyone else, the hum of conversation had returned. But for Daria Miller, the world had tilted on its axis. "Kensington," he whispered again, clutching the edge of the reception desk until his knuckles turned white. "The Kensington Land Trust." He frantically pulled his iPhone from his pocket, his trembling fingers mistyping the name twice before he hit search. The results loaded instantly. The first image was not of Almira, but of an older man with a stern face and a cowboy hat, Elias Kensington, the Baron of the Midwest. Daria clicked the first article. "Billionaire land tycoon, Elias Kensington, passes away at 88. Entire estate and control of Kensington. Global Holdings leaves to sole granddaughter, Almira Kensington." The date of the article was 2 years ago, exactly 1 year after their divorce. Daria felt like he had been punched in the gut. He scrolled down. Assets estimated at $12 billion, including vast agricultural tracts, oil rights in the Dakotas, and the controlling stake in the Aurora Borealis Investment Group. "Oh my God," Daria gasped. The air in the terminal suddenly felt thin. "Daria," Jessica whined, tugging at his sleeve. "Why did that plain woman get the big plane? And why are you looking at your phone? You need to fix this. My followers are waiting for a travel update," Daria snapped. He whipped around, his eyes wild. "Shut up, Jessica. Just shut up for 1 second." Jessica recoiled, her mouth dropping open in shock. "Excuse me? That plain woman just flew out in a $70 million aircraft because she owns the bank I am trying to impress. She's the money, Jessica. She's the damn money." He turned back to the desk agent, who was looking at him with a mixture of fear and disdain. "I need a plane, now. I don't care what it costs. Get me to Zurich. Get me to Gstaad. If I miss this meeting, I'm dead." "Sir," the agent said coolly, "the only thing available right now is a Hawker 400 XP. It's a light jet. It will require a fuel stop in Iceland. It will be cozy." "I'll take it," Daria snarled, throwing his black Amex on the counter. "How much?" 65,000. One way. Immediate payment." Daria swallowed hard. He didn't have $65,000 in liquid cash in that account. He had to transfer funds from the company payroll account, a felony if he got caught, but a necessary risk. Run it. The flight was a nightmare. The Hawker 400 XP is a fine aircraft for a short hop from New York to Miami. For a transatlantic crossing in winter, it was a claustrophobic tube of misery, while Elmira was likely sipping vintage champagne in a lie-flat bed on her Global Express, cruising smoothly at 51,000 feet above the weather. Daria and Jessica were bouncing through turbulence at 35,000 feet. The small jet bucked and swayed violently over the Atlantic. Jessica spent the first 4 hours crying in the lavatory, then the next 3 complaining about the lack of Wi-Fi. Daria sat crammed in his seat, his laptop open, staring at the dossier of the Aurora Borealis Trust. He read every line, searching for a loophole, a weakness, anything he could exploit. But all he found was terrifying competence. The trust had a reputation for swallowing distressed companies, stripping them of their assets, and selling the scraps. And the chairwoman was the woman he had told to buy luggage for a move to a trailer park. He thought back to their marriage. Elmira had been so quiet. She never talked about her family, other than to say they were in farming and from the country. Daria had assumed she was ashamed of her poverty. He realized now she wasn't ashamed. She was private. She had been hiding from people exactly like him, gold diggers. And he, the great Daria Miller, the genius CEO, had been the biggest fool of all. He had had a winning lottery ticket in his pocket, and he had thrown it in the trash because he wanted a shinier wrapper. "We're descending into Keflavik for fuel," the pilot announced over the intercom, his voice crackling. "Weather is rough. Hold on." As the small plane slammed onto the icy runway in Iceland for a 45-minute refueling stop, Daria looked out the window at the bleak, grey landscape. "I can fix this," he muttered to himself, a mantra of desperation. "She loved me once. She was obsessed with me. I just need to remind her. I need to charm her. Business is business. She won't throw away a good deal just because of personal feelings. She's too smart for that. Right?" He didn't believe a word of it. They arrived in Gstaad 14 hours later. They were exhausted, wrinkled, and smelling of stale airplane air. Jessica refused to walk to the car, demanding Daria carry her bags through the snow. Daria left her at the hotel, the Gstaad Palace, with his credit card and strict instructions to stay in the room. He couldn't risk her offending the trust any further. He showered, shaved, and put on his best suit, a charcoal Tom Ford. He practiced his smile in the mirror. It looked brittle. The meeting was set for 7 p.m. at Chalet Edelweiss, a private residence owned by the trust. The car service took him up a winding mountain road. The snow was falling heavily, large flakes that dampened the sound of the world. Through the trees he saw it. Chalet Edelweiss wasn't a house. It was a fortress of timber and stone, glowing with warm, golden light against the dark mountain. Security was tight. Men with earpieces checked his ID at the gate, then again at the front door. They patted him down, taking his phone. "No electronics in the boardroom, Mr. Miller," the guard said. Daria was led into a massive room with a vaulted ceiling and a roaring fireplace large enough to roast a whole ox. The walls were lined with hunting trophies and oil paintings of severe-looking ancestors. At the center of the room was a long table made of a single slab of black walnut. Sitting on one side were 3 men. One was a Swiss banker type, thin, bespectacled, terrifyingly precise. One was an American lawyer, heavy-set, bulldog face, and the third was the man from the airport, the concierge who had spoken to Daria. No, not a concierge. He was sitting at the table. Mr. Miller, the Swiss man said without standing. I am Herr Vogel. This is Mr. Blackwood, legal counsel. Please, sit. Daria sat. The chair was low, forcing him to look up slightly at them. A subtle power move. Gentlemen, Daria began, turning on his visionary CEO voice. Thank you for meeting me. I know the travel arrangements were chaotic, but Ether Deep is ready to revolutionize the logistics supply chain. Our AI algorithms are projecting a 40% efficiency increase in Q3 alone. The merger with your European logistics arm is the natural next step. We have reviewed the numbers. Mr. Blackwood, the lawyer, rumbled. Your burn rate is unsustainable. You are hemorrhaging cash. You are leveraging personal assets to keep the lights on. To be frank, Mr. Miller, Ether Deep is a sinking ship. You are here asking for a life raft, not a partnership. Daria felt the sweat trickle down his back. That is a pessimistic view. We are in a growth phase. Amazon didn't make a profit for years. We are building the infrastructure of the future. Infrastructure requires capital, Herr Vogel said, tapping a red folder on the table. And leadership. We have concerns about the judgment of the current CEO. Daria bristled. My judgment is impeccable. I built this company from nothing. Did you? The voice came from the shadows at the far end of the room. A heavy oak door opened. Almira Kensington walked in. She had changed. Gone was the travel outfit. She was wearing a structured navy power suit that looked like it had been tailored by angels. On her wrist was a Patek Philippe watch that cost more than Daria's house. But it was her eyes that held the power. They were cold, hard flint. The three men at the table immediately stood up. It was a reflex of respect. Daria scrambled to stand up too, catching his knee on the table leg. Almira, Daria breathed. She didn't look at him. She walked to the head of the table and sat down. The men sat only after she did. Chairwoman, Herr Vogel nodded. We were just discussing Mr. Miller's liquidity crisis. I am familiar with Mr. Miller's financial habits, Almira said, her voice smooth and devoid of emotion. She finally turned her gaze to Daria. It felt like a searchlight. Hello again, Daria. I trust the Hawker was comfortable. I hear the turbulence over the North Atlantic is particularly nasty this time of year. Daria forced a laugh. It came out as a squeak. It was character building. Almira, look, I had no idea about all this, about your grandfather. You didn't ask, she cut him off. In 5 years of marriage, you never asked about my family, other than to mock them. You were too busy talking about yourself. I was building a future for us, Daria lied, leaning forward. Everything I did for the family. You did it for your ego, Almira corrected him. And then you discarded me when you thought I was a liability. You paid me $10,000 to disappear. You made me sign a waiver so I couldn't touch your millions. She opened a leather folder in front of her. She pulled out a yellowed piece of paper. It was the waiver he had made her sign 3 years ago. My lawyers tell me this is a very interesting document, Daria, she said, tapping the paper. It says that you waive all rights to any of my future assets, and I waive rights to yours. It was intended to protect you from me, but it seems the tables have turned. Almira, please. Daria switched tactics. He softened his voice, the voice he used to seduce investors. We have a history. We loved each other once. Don't let the past destroy a good business deal. Ether Deep is a gold mine. If you invest, if you approve this merger, you'll make billions. We can be partners, a power couple, the way we were meant to be. He reached out his hand across the table, palm up, a gesture of invitation. Almira looked at his hand like it was a dead fish. Partners, she repeated. Daria, you don't want a partner. You want a savior. And you want to know the funny thing? I was going to approve the deal. Daria froze. What? When the proposal first came across my desk 2 weeks ago, I saw the potential, Almira said. The tech is good. The algorithm is solid. I was ready to sign the check. I was ready to overlook your arrogance because the business made sense. I thought, maybe he's changed. Maybe he's grown up. She leaned back. But then I saw you at the airport today. I saw how you treated the staff. I saw how you treated that woman you're with. And I saw how you treated me when you thought I was nobody. She closed the folder with a sharp snap. Character is a leading indicator of business success, Daria. And your character is bankrupt. You haven't changed. You're just a bully in a better suit. So you're killing the deal? Daria's voice shook. You can't. The bank will foreclose on Monday. I'll lose everything. I'm not killing the deal, Almira said. I'm changing the terms. She slid a new document across the table. It was thick. This is a hostile takeover offer, Mr. Blackwood explained gruffly. The trust will acquire 100% of Ether Deep's debts and assets. We will pay off your loans in Zurich. Daria's eyes widened. Okay, that saves the company. What do I get? Do I stay on as CEO? Do I get a payout? Almira smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. Read page 42, Daria. Daria flipped the pages frantically. He found the clause. Clause 12.4. Executive leadership transition. Upon execution of this agreement, the current CEO, Daria Miller, will be immediately terminated for cause. Severance package, 10,000 $10,000 US. Daria looked up, his face purple. $10,000? My company is worth hundreds of millions. This is an insult. It's severance pay, Almira said, using his exact words from 3 years ago. Buy yourself some new luggage, Daria. You'll need it when you move back to wherever you end up. I won't sign it. Daria slammed his fist on the table. I'll fight you. I'll find another investor. There are no other investors, Herr Vogel said quietly. We have checked. Everyone knows you are insolvent. It is this deal or bankruptcy court on Tuesday morning. In bankruptcy court, you get 0. Here, you get 10,000. Daria looked around the room. The fire crackled. The ancestors on the walls seemed to be judging him. He looked at Almira. She was the queen of the board, and he was the jester. He was trapped. Where do I sign? He whispered, defeated. Wait, Almira said. There is one more condition. Daria looked up, hope flickering. What? The woman. Jessica, Almira said. I noticed she likes expensive things. Does she know you're broke? Does she know you're about to sign away your company and your lifestyle? No, Daria said. She thinks we're rich. Bring her in, Almira commanded the guard at the door. If I'm buying your company, I want full transparency. Daria's heart stopped. Almira, please, don't do this. She'll leave me. That's the point, Daria, Almira said softly. You need to learn what it feels like to be discarded for not having enough money. It's the lesson you never learned. The door opened. Jessica walked in, looking annoyed but curious, holding a glass of champagne she had snagged from the waiting room. Finally, Jessica said. Did we win? Are we rich? Almira Kensington stood up. Hello, Jessica. Please take a seat. Daria has some news for you. Jessica stood in the center of the room, the crystal champagne flute dangling loosely in her fingers. She looked from Daria, who was slumped in his chair like a man facing a firing squad, to Almira, who sat at the head of the table like a judge. Daria, Jessica asked, her voice losing its playful edge. What is she talking about? What news? Daria couldn't look at her. He stared at the polished grain of the walnut table. Jess, the deal, the terms have changed. Changed how? She stepped closer, her expensive heels clicking sharply on the hardwood. Did we get the 200 million? Can I go shopping tomorrow? No, Almira answered for him. Her voice was calm, cutting through the tension like a scalpel. There is no 200 million for Daria. He is selling the company to the Kensington Trust for $1. In exchange, we are paying off his debts, so he doesn't go to prison for fraud. And he is being fired, effective immediately. Jessica dropped the glass. It shattered on the stone floor, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Champagne splattered onto her white fur coat, but she didn't even notice. Fired? She shrieked. She spun on Daria. Is this true? Tell me she's lying. You said you were the king of logistics. You said you were worth 9 figures. I was, Daria pleaded, finally looking up, his eyes red-rimmed. I am. It's just a liquidity crunch. It's temporary, Jess. We can rebuild. I have the severance check. It's $10,000. We can go back to New York, get a small apartment, start over. I have ideas, Jess. I'm a visionary. Jessica stared at him, her face contorting into a mask of pure disgust. It wasn't disappointment. It was revulsion. It was the look one gives to a stepped-on cockroach. $10,000, she repeated, her voice trembling with rage. You dragged me to a snowy mountain, made me fly on that tin can of a plane, and humiliated me in front of her. For $10,000. My handbag costs more than your net worth. Jess, baby, please. Daria reached for her hand. She slapped him. It wasn't a theatrical slap. It was a hard, stinging blow that echoed across the boardroom. The security guards shifted, but Almira held up a hand to stop them. She wanted Daria to feel this. Don't touch me, Jessica hissed. You are a fraud. You're a loser. I thought you were a shark, Daria, but you're just bait. She turned to Almira, her demeanor changing instantly from rage to sycophantic pleading. Miss Kensington, Almira, surely you can see I'm a victim here, too. He lied to me. He manipulated me. I have a brand to protect. Perhaps the trust needs a brand ambassador. I have 3 million followers. Almira looked at Jessica with a mixture of pity and amusement. Jessica, you aren't a victim. You're a mercenary. You bet on the wrong horse. My security team will escort you to the train station. You can buy your own ticket home. The train station? Jessica gasped. But my luggage, my furs, are at the hotel, Almira said coldly. I suggest you hurry. Checkout time is in 10 minutes, and the room is no longer being paid for by Ether Deep. Jessica let out a frustrated scream, turned on her heel, and stormed out of the room without looking back at Daria. Daria watched her go. The silence that followed was heavy. He was alone. Truly alone. Sign the papers, Daria, Mr. Blackwood grunted, sliding a pen across the table. Daria picked up the heavy fountain pen. It felt like lead. He looked at the document. Transfer of ownership. Termination of employment. He thought about fighting. He thought about flipping the table and storming out. But go where? To a Swiss prison for unpaid debts? To the streets? With a shaking hand, Daria Miller signed his name. He signed away his company, his legacy, his patents, and his pride. Herr Vogel took the papers, checked the signature, and nodded. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a check. $10,000, the Swiss banker said, sliding it across the table. Drawn on a US bank. You should be able to cash it at the airport. Daria took the check. He stood up, his legs wobbling. Almira, he whispered. I don't, Almira said. She didn't look angry anymore. She just looked tired. Don't apologize. It's too late, and don't thank me. I didn't do this for you. I did it because the technology you built is actually good. It just needed a leader who wasn't a narcissist. Will I ever see you again? Almira finally looked him in the eye. I doubt it. I travel by private jet, Daria. You'll be flying coach. Our paths aren't likely to cross. She turned her chair away from him, facing the fire. Goodbye, Daria. The guards stepped forward. This way, sir. Daria walked out of Chalet Edelweiss into the freezing night. The snow was falling harder now. The car service that had brought him up was gone. Where is my ride? He asked the guard at the gate. The account was closed, sir, the guard said, his breath steaming in the cold air. The village is a 3-mile walk down the hill. Daria Miller, the former CEO, buttoned his Tom Ford suit jacket against the biting wind. He clutched the check for $10,000 in his freezing hand and began to walk into the darkness. The rain in Seattle was relentless. It wasn't the clean, romantic snow of the Swiss Alps that Daria remembered from that fateful night in Gstaad. It was a greasy, freezing drizzle that turned the highway into a river of red tail lights. Daria Miller sat in the driver's seat of a black Lincoln Continental. It wasn't his car. It belonged to the Emerald City Livery Fleet. Daria was just employee number 4092. He adjusted his collar, which felt too tight. He had lost 30 pounds since the collapse of Ether Deep, but not in a healthy way. His face was gaunt, his eyes shadowed by chronic insomnia, and his hair, once styled by the best barbers in Manhattan, was now thinning and grey at the temples. He checked his phone mounted on the dashboard. The time was 4:45 p.m. He was currently parked in the holding lot of the Four Seasons Hotel, waiting for a VIP premiere pickup. This was his life now, after the severance check of $10,000 had evaporated, swallowed by legal fees, outstanding debts, and a few months of denial living in a hotel he couldn't afford. Daria had hit rock bottom. The tech world had blacklisted him. His name was toxic. The only thing he was qualified to do was drive. So he drove. He watched the raindrops race down the windshield, hypnotized. He thought about Jessica. She had latched onto a minor league baseball player 3 weeks after leaving him in Switzerland. He thought about his penthouse. He thought about the day he told Almira she was lucky to be a passenger in his life. The irony was a physical weight in his chest. He was literally a driver now. Everyone else was the passenger. Ping. The app flashed. Client, S. Kensington. Destination, Clay Lacey Aviation, private terminal. Daria stopped breathing. He stared at the screen, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. S. Kensington. It had to be a coincidence. Kensington was a common British name. There were probably hundreds of Kensingtons in Seattle. But deep down, in the pit of his stomach, he knew. He considered cancelling the ride. He could claim a flat tire. He could claim illness. But if he cancelled a VIP ride this close to pickup, the livery service would dock his pay, and he was already late on his studio apartment rent. He needed the $80 fare. It's not her, he whispered to the rearview mirror, checking his reflection. He pulled his chauffeur's cap lower over his eyes. And even if it is, she won't recognize me. I'm a ghost. He put the Lincoln in drive and rolled up to the hotel entrance. The doorman, a man Daria used to tip generously when he stayed here on business trips, didn't recognize him. He opened the back door of the Lincoln as 2 people emerged from the hotel lobby under a massive umbrella. The first was a man, tall, distinguished, wearing a peacoat that cost more than Daria's annual salary. He had a kind face, intelligent eyes, and the easy confidence of a man who has nothing to prove. Daria recognized him immediately from the cover of Time magazine. It was Dr. Adrian Hale, the renowned philanthropist and neurosurgeon, and then she stepped out. Almira. Time seemed to warp, slowing down to a painful crawl. She was wearing a trench coat the color of honey and a scarf that looked like spun gold. She didn't look like the plain wife Daria had discarded. She looked like royalty. She was radiant, her skin glowing, her posture commanding, yet graceful. She was laughing at something Dr. Hale had said, a genuine bell-like sound that Daria hadn't heard in years. Daria gripped the steering wheel so hard his leather gloves creaked. He kept his head down, staring fixedly at the dashboard, praying to a god he didn't believe in, that the partition glass would hide him. "Thank you," Almira said to the doorman, her voice sending a shiver down Daria's spine. She slid into the back seat, directly behind Daria. Dr. Hale slid in beside her. The door thumped shut, sealing them in the quiet, leather-scented intimacy of the car. "Good afternoon," Dr. Hale said, his voice deep and polite. "To the private terminal at Clay Lacey, please. And we are in a bit of a rush." "Yes, sir," Daria rasped. He cleared his throat, trying to mask his voice. "Right away, sir." He pulled away from the curb, merging into the downtown traffic. His hands were shaking. He was driving his ex-wife and her new lover. It was a torture specifically designed for him. For the first 10 minutes, Daria focused entirely on the road, terrified that if he looked in the rearview mirror, he would make eye contact. But he couldn't stop his ears from working. "I'm glad we extended the trip," Dr. Hale said, taking Almira's hand. Daria saw the movement in his peripheral vision. "The board was very impressed with your speech, Almira. The way you restructured the agricultural loans for the Midwest farmers. It's revolutionary." "It was Grandpa's dream," Almira replied softly. "I'm just executing it." "But Adrian, are you sure about the vineyard in Tuscany? It's a big commitment." "I'm sure," Adrian laughed. "We need a place to escape. Besides, I want to plant those olive trees we talked about. A place for the kids to run around one day." Kids. The word hit Daria like a physical blow. He had told Almira he never wanted children. He told her they were a distraction from his career. Now, she was building a future that included vineyards and children, a life of richness and legacy that Daria had explicitly rejected. Then, the conversation shifted, taking a turn that made Daria's blood run cold. "By the way," Adrian said, checking his phone, "I saw the quarterly report for that tech subsidiary you acquired last year, Ether Deep." Daria flinched. The car swerved slightly within the lane. "Careful," Adrian muttered, glancing at the driver. "Sorry," Daria croaked. "Pothole." "What about Ether Deep?" Almira asked. "It's thriving," Adrian said, reading from his screen. "Profits are up 200%. It's amazing, isn't it? It was a sinking ship 2 years ago, a classic case study of corporate hubris. I was actually reading an article about the founder. What was his name? Miller?" Daria felt sweat trickling down his back, soaking his cheap white shirt. He wanted to scream. He wanted to drive the car into a barrier just to make the talking stop. "Daria Miller," Almira said. Her voice was neutral. No anger, no bitterness, just a flat statement of fact. "Right," Adrian continued, oblivious to the tension radiating from the driver's seat. The article called him the Icarus of logistics. He burned through $300 million in 2 years on private jets and parties, all while the underlying tech was actually brilliant. It's tragic, really. A man who had everything but the character to keep it. "He wasn't tragic, Adrian," Almira said, looking out the window at the grey Seattle skyline. "He was lost. He thought net worth was the same thing as self-worth. When the money was gone, there was nothing left of him. Daria bit his lips so hard he tasted copper. There was nothing left of him. She spoke about him as if he were dead, as if he were a cautionary tale told to business students, not a human being who was currently 3 feet away from her, driving her to a private jet. "Well," Adrian said, putting his phone away, "I'm just glad you saw through him. The world is better off with competent people at the helm. You saved those jobs, Elmira." "I tried," she whispered. The rest of the drive was a blur of misery. Every red light felt like an eternity. Every laugh from the back seat was a knife in Daria's ego. Finally, the entrance to the Clay Lacey private terminal appeared. Daria steered the Lincoln through the security gates, flashing his badge to the guard. He pulled up onto the tarmac, where the sleet was coming down sideways. A massive Gulfstream G700 was waiting for them. It was a beast of a machine, sleek and silver, with the engines already spooling up with a high-pitched whine. A flight attendant was waiting at the bottom of the airstairs with an umbrella. Daria put the car in park. His job was to get out and open the door. He hesitated. If he got out, he would have to face her. The lights of the terminal were bright. She would see him. But if he didn't get out, he would lose his job. He took a deep breath, steeling himself. "She won't know. I've aged 10 years. I'm wearing a hat. I'm just the help." Daria opened his door and stepped into the rain. He walked around the back of the car and opened the rear door for Elmira. She stepped out, the wind whipping her coat around her legs. She looked up at the massive plane, then turned to wait for Adrian. Daria kept his head bowed, staring at her expensive leather boots. "Here," Adrian said, stepping out and handing Daria a folded bill. "Thank you for the ride. Drive safely in this weather." "Thank you, sir," Daria mumbled, reaching for the money. As he took the cash, his hand brushed against Elmira's sleeve. Elmira froze. She turned her head slowly. She looked at the hand that used to wear a platinum Rolex, now bare and chapped from the cold. She looked up at the frayed collar of the livery uniform. She looked at his face. Daria couldn't help it. He looked up. Their eyes locked. For 3 seconds, the sound of the jet engines faded away. Daria waited for the explosion. He waited for her to gasp, to point, to humiliate him the way he had humiliated her in that airport lounge 3 years ago. He waited for her to tell Adrian, "Look, it's him. The loser." But she didn't say a word. Her eyes softened, just a fraction. It wasn't pity. It was something worse. It was recognition, followed immediately by dismissal. She saw him. She knew exactly who he was, and she decided he didn't matter enough to interrupt her day. She turned to Adrian. "Ready to go, darling?" "Ready," Adrian smiled. Elmira took a step toward the plane, then paused. She turned back to Daria one last time. "Daria," she said softly. Adrian stopped. "You know him?" Elmira didn't look at Adrian. She kept her eyes on Daria. "I used to know someone who looked like him. A long time ago." She reached into her purse and pulled out something. It wasn't money. It was a small, sealed packet of tissues. "You look like you're crying," she said, placing the tissues in his hand on top of Adrian's tip. "Wipe your eyes. It's dangerous to drive with tears in your eyes." She turned and walked up the stairs of the jet, never looking back. Daria stood frozen on the tarmac. He looked down at his hand. He was holding a $50 bill and a packet of tissues. He reached up to his face and realized she was right. His cheeks were wet, and it wasn't just the rain. The door of the Gulfstream closed. The engines roared, increasing in pitch. Daria watched as the plane taxied away, the navigation lights blinking in the gloom. He watched as it gathered speed, lifting effortlessly into the grey sky, breaking the surly bonds of Earth to find the sunlight that always existed above the clouds. He was left behind, grounded. Daria walked back to the driver's seat of the Lincoln. He sat there for a long time, the engine idling. He looked at the tissues. He wiped his face. Then he looked at the app on his phone. New ride request, UberX. Pick up at Taco Bell, 2.4 miles away. Daria Miller put the car in gear. He merged back onto the highway, joining the thousands of other red taillights in the rain, just another anonymous driver in a world he used to think he owned. And that is the story of Daria Miller. He was a man who built a castle out of arrogance, only to have it washed away by the tide of reality. He spent his life believing that winning meant having the most money in the room. But he learned too late that the only currency that truly matters is how you treat people. He threw away a diamond because he wanted a glittery stone, and in the end, he was left holding nothing but a $50 tip from the man who took his place. It is a brutal, real-life reminder. Be careful who you step on while you're climbing the ladder, because they might be the ones holding the safety net when you fall. If this story gave you chills, or if you believe that character is destiny, please hit that like button right now. It really helps the video reach more people. What would you have done if you were Almira? Would you have spoken to him or walked away? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Thanks for watching.